Today's guest is the writer and creator of the hugely successful old-school setting Shadowdark, a game that recently won 4 Ennies at Gen Con 2024, the millionaire game designer Kelsey Dionne.
What an intro right there.
I know. So today I have my friend Lee. Me and Lee have gamed together for about 30 years, haven't we, Lee?
Yeah, probably about 30, I would say.
Yeah, about 30 years we've been playing together. So Lee was a backer of the Kickstarter and has been running Shadowdark for a year for us. And we have some thoughts on Shadowdark, but we'll touch on them at the end, okay?
Right.
Apologies in advance.
Yeah. One of our group, Mark, has some questions in it.
Oh, good.
And Mark is very rules oriented, so that's a heads up. Okay, so we're going to do our A's and B's first. Okay, so
yes.
So give us an answer. Don't think about it too much. Just hit us with an answer. Would you rather be the smartest person in the world or the richest person in the world?
Oh, probably the smartest, because I feel like I think the pursuit of knowledge is the most important thing. And that would make me happier than being rich, I think.
See, I agree, but not for the same reasons. Because I think if you were the smartest person in the world, you could become the richest person in the world. But also, the richest person in the world could be stupid enough to lose all of the money.
You're so right. And I wonder too, Bud, like if you were the smartest person in the world, would you actually transcend certain material desires? Would you be on another level where you almost didn't need certain things?
I mean, that's a bit heavy for a Monday, to be honest. Okay. Would you rather have the painful truth or a comforting lie?
It needs to be painful truth. It has to be. Whenever someone does I have good news and bad news, what do you want first? It always has to be the bad news. Just because otherwise you'll be dreading it, you know? But
have you ever had that thing where people say, do you want the good news or the bad news? And give you the bad news and say, there wasn't any good news. Because I've had that.
That's a rug pull right there. I don't think I've had that before. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would go with the painful truth, because then you can at least just accept that things. There's nothing worse than being lied to and find out later you've been lied to.
True.
Yeah. Okay, unless they tell you right there and then it was a lie immediately, and then they tell then they tell you the painful.
Yeah, I suppose. Okay, would you rather have babies dressed as animals or animals dressed as humans?
Right now it's animals dressed as humans, because I have a dog that we put sweaters on and stuff, and it might be the most delightful part of my day when we do that.
See, I think it depends entirely on the animal and the size of the animal. Yes. Little dogs look fine, don't they?
Right. Mine's a little dog. Thankfully, I think if she were a big dog, it would look forced, you know.
Yeah,
but
they always look unhappy, big dogs, don't they?
Yeah. Yes. But babies dressed as animals are also next level cute. So that's possibly the toughest question you've asked me so far.
You really think that's the hardest question? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. This we'll tell you what, this will put the cat amongst the pigeons. Thaco or Thac Zero?
Thaco. I've always said Thaco. What have you said? Have you guys always said Thaco?
Well, I've always said Thaco, but technically it's not. Yeah, I've always said Thaco because it's essentially a word, but it's actually to hit armor class 0. It's a number,
right?
Or the absence of a number, so it should technically be Thac Zero
or Thac Naught.
Thac Naught.
Thac Naught. That's very.
Sounds like a transformer.
It does. I've never heard that version. I've heard American accented people say Thaco before as well, and I've always found that a bit wrong. Yeah.
See, I've heard people say, in World of Greyhawk, Ios to the north, the demigod. Americans pronounce it completely differently. They say Ius.
Ius. Ius. Yes. I have heard that, but I'm deeply jealous of your accents. I wish I had. I feel like I'm cursed with a Midwestern American accent, so it makes me sound slightly unserious at all times.
Well, you're from Wisconsin.
I am, actually.
Yeah.
Yes. That's amazing that you know that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've read it. So I didn't guess it. I can guess. The thing is, there's only kind of 2 accents the British know. That's New York or Alabama.
Yeah.
It's pretty much it.
Very polar opposite styles from each other, I think. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so the next one. Greyhawk or Blackmore?
That is so challenging. Okay, my knee-jerk reaction is Greyhawk because I am more familiar with it growing up. It was sort of my Dungeons & Dragons touchstone. but I've come to have a lot of respect for and interest in Blackmoor as I've gotten older and delved backwards in time into the history of the game. So
yeah,
I'll have to say Greyhawk, but there's true love in my heart for Blackmoor as well.
See, I would say Greyhawk. I ran an AD&D campaign for 13 years in Greyhawk. 13 real years, not like game years. Yeah,
game time. Yeah.
Well, spoilers. My Shadowdark campaign is based in Greyhawk.
Oh, see, there you go. Yeah. And why did you decide Greyhawk?
I chose it because we're a load of old grognards who have played Greyhawk in different editions, AD&D, second edition, probably third edition, maybe not. But it was such a rich backstory. And I had loads of books that were sitting on a shelf. So I thought, well, I'll keep everyone happy by going to Shadowdark, but to have a familiar sort of setting that they had a bit of a bit of an understanding of. So
that's wise, yeah.
But I set it after the Greyhawk Wars, so it's a bit later on than published material, I think. So.
Oh, interesting. So sort of a new frontier that players can take different paths, but
yeah.
I don't know, Bud, did you just choose Greyhawk? Because, 13 years ago, do you remember the reason you chose Greyhawk?
Well, it wasn't 13 years ago. It was 30 years ago, but I ran a campaign for 13 years.
I misheard you, 30.
No, that's understandable. No, I didn't run a campaign. I better clarify. I didn't run a campaign for 30 years ago. I ran a campaign for 13 years.
Oh, okay.
There's 17 years have passed since, maybe more, actually. I chose Greyhawk because I liked it. It was that simple, and it was easy. It was easy to get. You could go to any game shop and buy it these days. You look at the prices on eBay, you think you were buying the most ridiculously overpriced stuff. You couldn't give this stuff away back in the day.
Oh my gosh, it's so different now. Yeah, it's true. I think in the last 10 years, there's been this incredible nostalgia-driven resurgence of, I was trying to get an original copy of Caverns of Thracia a couple years ago, and I had to really shake the contact tree to even find somebody with one. It was so hard to track down now, and it used to be that you could pick one up for $3 at a garage sale. So yeah,
you used to work in a game shop, didn't you?
I did. That was my high school jobs were working in game shops. So oddly enough, I worked at more than one. There was one in my hometown, which was a very small farming town. And the couple that owned and ran it eventually moved out of state. So it ended up being purchased by my best friend's family, who kind of ran it for a few years, but just it wasn't their industry of expertise. So it kind of just, the game store kind of petered out truly. And so I worked at that one. And then I switched over to working at the longest standing brick and mortar game store in the country, which is in Madison, Wisconsin. I worked there for many years as my high school job and then my summer job home from college. So, yeah.
And then you went on to kind of do it kind of like like a career, I suppose, didn't you?
Yes. It's funny to think that I didn't know it at the time, but I was working in my career path already in high school.
I wish I could have done that. Okay, last AOB. Gulf of America or Gulf of Mexico?
Gulf of Mexico. That's how I grew up saying it. It's so hard to change
because that's
names.
what it is.
And it's also east of Mexico. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I think I would love one day to go to Mexico. I've never been, which is crazy because we share a border. But, everyone I know who goes there is talking about how beautiful and wonderful it is, how kind the people are. And I'm like, I just think Mexico has immense charm and beauty. And why do we need to change things? We don't need to change that.
It's got all cartels as well, so there's that side.
There's bad stuff too.
Yeah, there's bad stuff everywhere.
You're so right. You're so right. It's got some challenges they need to face, but
yeah,
it's like when Pluto became not a planet briefly. I couldn't process it. I was like, no, I've grown up knowing that Pluto was a planet. Why are we changing it?
I'm with you on that one. I am with you on that one. I did not like the fact that they demoted Pluto.
Yes.
I know.
Did they re-promote it later? They didn't they go back and say it's now planet again, or am I wrong?
I'm not sure. Is it a planetoid now?
Oh, yeah, maybe it's wishful thinking that I'm like, no, they fixed it.
Yeah. There'll always be a planet in our hearts.
Yes, it will.
But It's round though. If you see pictures of it, it's round. It's not like
so is a
an
football.
asteroid.
That doesn't mean it's a planet.
Well, they said it was an
oblong.
asteroid. Yeah, they said it was an asteroid.
Oh.
So you imagine like a rocky, lumpy, non-symmetrical thing, but it's actually round. So
It should count then.
it's roughly round.
It's not round. Yeah, but it's
No, it's not
squashed,
perfectly
isn't
round.
it? Slightly.
Oh, bladed spheroid.
Blaze spheroid. Look how clever
Yeah,
you
that's
are.
what-
These are big
yeah.
words.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next bit of the show is something we always ask all of our guests. So have you ever had an experience, a spooky experience, be that seeing a UFO or coming face to face with a Bigfoot or even like a ghost?
Right. So maybe I can ask you which one you want because there's two that come to mind. One I had as a child involving ghosts.
Hit me with them both.
Oh, okay.
Hit me with
I
them.
will give you both. So the childhood story, and like I'm open-minded about what could or could not be real. I mean, I like that science can prove things using repetitive demonstration. However, I'm not totally in disbelief of supernatural things. And so when I was maybe 9, 10 years old, my family and I went to visit my aunt who lives in Colorado, which is a very mountainous state out towards the west. And they have the Rocky Mountains where there was a lot of mining and gold prospecting done in the early days of exploration. And so there are a bunch of abandoned mines. And we went on a mine tour one day where they would send small groups of people down with a tour guide into these mine shafts to show them what it was like down there, you know, how they performed the mining and sort of tell the history of the place. And we heard stories about how some tragic collapses caused some miners to lose their lives. And that when that happened, people believed that the mines became haunted by their spirits. And so I was in the back of the line with my sister and we were walking along and I remember hearing a noise behind me and looking up the tunnel back the way we came.
Yeah.
And I saw someone walking around in like overalls with you know, like a light source of some kind. They were far enough away that I couldn't tell if it was maybe like a flashlight or a torch or if it was some kind of lantern. And I remember looking at them and being like, I thought there was only supposed to be one group down here at a time because the shafts were so narrow that you could only have one group go in and then walk back out the same way they came. And I remember thinking like, oh, that's so strange. And we continued on the tour and left. And I asked the tour guide about it at the end. I was like, oh, was there another tour group in here? And he was like, no. What are you talking about? And I was like, well, the guy in the overalls who was walking around up behind us, there was like another tour or something. And he was like, no, there's not supposed to be any other people in here except one group. And I was like, what? I am absolutely sure I saw somebody. And so to this day, I don't know if they staged ghost sightings or something, but he wasn't like messing with me. You know how like sometimes when there's a joke going on, they're like, oh, what are you talking about? But he was just like, no, there wouldn't have been anybody else. No, that I don't know what you heard. That was probably nothing. And I am certain I saw somebody. So to this day, maybe it was the ghost of a miner. I don't know. They were wearing miner looking clothing. That's all I could say. So it was kind of spooky, but in hindsight.
Do you know what?
Yeah.
I'm thinking this is the origin of Shadowdark.
Could it be? Yes. I was deep underground and had a random encounter with something spooky. So you could be right.
Okay, so what's the second story you've got for us then?
This one I'll be brief about because it was short, but
take as long as you want.
Well, thank you. So as an adult, I was living with my parents between moving states. And this was while I was writing Shadowdark, actually. So this was in like 2020 or so. And they live up in the far northern forests of Wisconsin near the border of Canada. And it's a very sort of trackless, empty place. There's not a lot of people who live there. And one night it was late, and this is so strange. I and my wife now were both sitting in the room working away on things, and it was quite late. And we both suddenly felt very compelled to look outside. Like at the same time, we were both like, oh, I wonder what the night sky looks like. And this isn't something we would normally do, but we were like, I wonder what it looks like outside. So we were like, why don't we go take a look? So we pull up the shades and look out, and over the trees is a huge strobing rainbow colored orb. And it was flashing between all these different colors, and it was moving in a way that I cannot fathom some form of aircraft could move, because it would move suddenly and without any inertia very, very far to the left, and then very far to the right, and then straight up into the sky. And we were absolutely baffled as to what this could be. We were like, could this be some kid's drone? But we were out in the middle of the woods in the middle of the night, nobody around. So we watched it and filmed it. And then at one point, it split into two identical lights, one of which that just shot off so fast and so far away that we didn't see where it went. And then eventually it just faded out. It just like disappeared right where it was. And we never saw it again. And we had filmed it. So my wife is a very good like video/photo editor. So we took frame by frame looks at the video. And in each frame, it was a different color and shape, the object. At one point, it would be a diamond shape that was blue. And then it was a square orange. And then it was like a red ball. In each frame different. And it was absolutely mind-boggling. I've never seen something like that again. And I don't know what it was.
Wow.
That is weird.
Maybe an alien. Yeah. I want to think it was an alien because I love that kind of thing. But it was kind of scary, actually, because it was, you know, I've seen tons of planes, helicopters, drones. I've seen all of that. And this was nothing like any of them. So what was it?
Did it make a noise at all?
Nothing. No noise. No. Yeah, it was, we actually went outdoors on our porch to look at it so we could get clearer video of it. And it was just completely silent. Yeah.
That is very strange.
Yeah.
That's weird. Yeah, that's definitely spooky.
Thanks, William. I don't think I've told anyone that.
Well, now everyone's going to know. You're the first person to come up with 2 stories.
No way.
Okay, so what is your gaming DNA? Where did it all start for you?
Yeah, I think it started before I was a gamer in fantasy fiction, because that was really my favorite stuff to read as a kid, you know. I'm very lucky that my mom is an English language teacher and actually a reading specialist. Like her job in life was to bring kids up to their proper reading level if they were lagging behind, and then also to teach kids who were at exceptional reading levels to sort of keep them going and keep them improving too. And so she was very interested in what my sisters and I were reading and encouraging us to growing up. So she'd always be checking out like fantasy books from the library for me and bringing them home. And I really was steeped in that. So eventually my mother, who was friends with the librarian, they were talking, and the librarian's son had a D&D box set. We were the same age. And she asked my mom, hey, do you want to borrow this and see if your daughter might like it? Because our kids always are checking out the same books. They like the same stuff. She might like this. So my mom was like, yeah, absolutely, I'll borrow it. And she brought it home to me. And that was the beginning in grade school. I opened this box set up, and I think it was a second edition AD&D box set that I believe was called First Quest or something of that nature.
First Quest, yeah.
You know it? Yes, that was it. That was the first thing I got my hands on, and I was absolutely starstruck by it. It had like fold-up maps in it.
It had the big map of a castle in it, didn't it?
Yes, and and I think they were double-sided, so there was a few different, you know, areas that you could explore. It had character sheets. I think it had a CD of like spooky dungeon sounds and all that. So I didn't know what I was doing, but I was totally starstruck by the idea of you being the character and getting to be in the place exploring. And I was reading, you know, the adventure manual and thinking, like, trying to imagine going through it myself. And I certainly wasn't playing D&D correctly, but I just absolutely loved it. And then my mom was like, well, more of this stuff then. So she kept like buying me secondhand dungeon magazines and all that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you've got another Kickstarter coming up, haven't you, for Shadowdark?
We do. Yeah, it's coming up so much faster than I'm ready for it. No, it's very imminent, but we're gonna be doing another one already.
So what can you tell us about that? Well, any juicy stretch goals that you can tell us about, or?
Oh yeah. So, well, I mean, I think the main thing itself is probably what I'm most excited about, which is it's actually me turning all of the setting and game world material I've been developing for the last like 10 years into a coherent regional setting. So I've published things like actually, over time, I've published 5th edition adventures. I've certainly published Shadowdark adventures, supplements. And every time I've written something like that, it's actually been set in my personal game world that I've been running games in forever. Yeah. And I've been developing it alongside developing all of this adventure material and supplemental content and running games for my players. But I had never really written it down as something that someone themselves could use. So I'm basically creating that and stitching together all of the adventures I've written across game systems and for Shadowdark and turning it all into a regional setting that you can then dump all of that into seamlessly. And so it's going to be called The Western Reaches, just because it's just that seemed fitting to me for some reason. And it'll be like all of my game world finally presented coherently for the first time. And I'm so pumped about it.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's good.
So, I mean, Lee will be back on it, won't you, Lee?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I've already got a reminder set on Kickstarter. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
So you started off with AD&D by the sound of it, with First Quest.
Yes.
So what happened for you to take the step back further in time to go back to the old school revival or renaissance, however you want to put it, to base it more like D&D, like the original?
Yes. Well, it's very fortunate, I think, for me, because I started playing in 2nd edition, and then I started going to the local game store that my friend's family eventually bought. And some of the regulars there were people who were very involved in D&D, you know, both professionally and for fun, because this was Southern Wisconsin. So the guy running games for us was a weekly player in Gary Gygax's home game.
That's one of the questions we had. Let's touch on that later when we get to that.
Yeah, I'll save the details. Needless to say, he had a very old school way of running the game for us. And we eventually adopted 3rd edition because it came out not too long after that. But he was running us in like the city state of the Invincible Overlord and all these very old school places. And the style that he used to run the game was very much that style. It was very old school in its ways. And so as time went on, I would be jumping from 3rd edition back to playing a little bit of 1st edition with those friends and some other mutual acquaintances. And then I'd jump forward to 4th edition. And, you know, so I was playing all over the spectrum of the editions. And I found that I had the most fun playing the older editions and really just got my chance to play them with the various game masters who volunteered to run games. And they were like, that's what we're playing. We're playing 1st edition. So then I would get to. Yeah. So
what did you think of 4th edition? Because our group played it 19th level.
Wow.
Yeah. 2 different campaigns.
You guys got up to 9. Yeah.
We had one combat that lasted 3 sessions. not 3 hours, 3 sessions, 3 5-hour sessions.
3 sessions. Oh, I mean, I guess I can extrapolate how you guys feel about 4th edition. And I think I probably line up with that same opinion, which is I think there were some things it did that were really interesting and cool, especially for the quality of life improvements for the game master. You know, like monster creation was a breeze.
And the Dell format.
Yes. And actually, it's 4th edition that introduced the control panel 1-page layout style for adventure design. I mean, I don't want to say they were the ones who introduced it, but it was the first time I had seen that in a mainstream product. And I think that very much trickled down into the OSR in the later years. But I didn't feel like D&D to me. And I gave it a solid run as a player. We played the Scales of War campaign path, which went from 1st through 30th level. And we played it all the way up through 30th level.
We're put in the middle of that, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're in the middle of Scales
of War. Are you playing it? You're playing it. Yes.
We've just done the bit where there's you go to the Giants Hall and there's a table that's been made out of a tree end.
Oh.
That was the last game we played 10 years ago. We haven't picked it up since.
No.
I haven't picked it up again. I know. It's and I mean, thank God I had wonderful players and game masters around me, because despite the challenges of the system, I found combat to be incredibly sloggy and boring. It's actually the first time I ever got drowsy during a D&D game because I was so bored. And I was like, you know, like, this only happens to me during history class. What is going on? I'm getting tired and drowsy. And, you know, it was just too grindy. And all the characters felt the same to me.
Yeah.
So
I said
exactly the same problem we had with it.
Yeah. What did you guys think?
I used to say to our DM that everyone is now like a spellcaster, because every time they have a go, they have a group of cards and they're going, "Ooh, what this? No, this, no, this," and they've got like choices every single go almost,
Yes.
and it just slows combat down massively. One thing that we used to do is trying to track conditions.
With plasticine.
So we used to use plasticine and stick it on the miniatures. So
You couldn't see the miniatures eventually. They were just covered in plasticine.
Just Christmas
different
trees.
Colours. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah, that was the same
red
problem
for
we had.
bloodied, like green for poisoned, and
Yellow for blinded. I know we used to make for blinded, we used to make them a white stick.
Yes, just it's the most iconic. Like,
we played
I
a
know
lot
what
of
that means.
plasticine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Goodness, and you had a 3-day long combat.
3 sessions, yeah. It was against the...
Well, yes.
Which one was it? It was the campaign where the undead one where you're going to fight Orcus in the end. We've kind of established that.
Yes.
And it was a Dracolich. And it was just one of them. Every time I got bloodied, it gained a load of hit points. With hit us with loads, and we had to spend rounds healing up. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was Mark. The Mark we mentioned earlier.
Oh,
Because
yes.
he was playing a warlord, which I thought was a cool class.
Yes.
And Lee was playing a rogue. So the warlord's thing was to enable other people to have extra goes. Now, Lee takes about as long as, like, glaciation to get through a go. He really does. So every go, Lee would take, what dice do we need now? And we'd Lee, it's the same dice every time. And he'd roll his die and he'd have his go. And then, that's totally true. And then he'd roll right round and Mark would give him another go. So by this time, I'd been like, missed. Right, sit back, get my phone out. 20 minutes later,
what Bud's trying to say is his character was rubbish.
I know what I'm trying to say.
Character was fantastic. So good that another player used it.
You can't help it that your character's good, okay? You can't help it.
He was horrible. He did lots of damage.
He was horrible.
Oh.
Yeah, but then getting 2 turns around will make you horrible.
Well, that just added to it.
But anyway.
Wow. So we've experienced the same pains with 4th edition, it sounds like.
Yeah, we always argued. I mean, I said this when I was on Quest and Beast show about D&D 4th edition, and people go nuts when you say it, but D&D 4th edition didn't feel like Dungeons and Dragons. It just didn't.
Completely didn't. Yeah, that was my problem with it. And I don't know, but here's an interesting question. I'm always curious because I would love to ask you guys this if I may. Is there anything from 4th edition you thought was more successful than other editions? Like any implementations or changes that you're like, that was excellent?
Bloodied.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's in 5th edition. Monster Manual monsters now have bloodied conditions.
Yes.
Well, not condition. It's a bloodied activation of a power, isn't it?
Right.
When they become bloodied, they would hit you with something.
Right.
I think my take on it was that it was just as well that they released the character generator program.
Oh God!
Because without that, you would not be able to manage the characters. It was so difficult because they had so many things to tweak and twist each time you go up a level, and you could print out all the cards for all the actions. If you didn't have those, you'd be like 4 pages of character sheet rustling around trying to find.
We had them all printed out like a deck of poker cards, like
right. We would print them and then put them in a Magic the Gathering sleeve, like back to the playing card. Yeah,
that's what we did.
You have your deck of options in front of you, like which one should I choose?
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what we found.
Some Magic the Gathering sleeves just for that because it drove us nuts. Without the character generator, it was just nuts.
So there was some proto ideas in 4th edition, including the character generator that, you know what I learned? I didn't know this. I was talking to Questing Beast. We were doing like a D&D trivia thing. And I was one of my opponents was Mike Merles, which is so not fair. Right. But he was the only one who remembered this, that the advantage disadvantage mechanic actually, I believe, I'm sorry. Not the advantage disadvantage. The death save mechanics of 5th edition are actually from 4th edition.
They
were pulled from that. Yeah. And I was shocked. I didn't realize. I was like, oh my gosh, that is true. I completely forgot. And I think that the idea of how death saves work in 5th edition is I prefer it to like negative hit points and all of that. So I was like, oh, look at that. Yeah. There was an innovation. That's good. Yeah.
But the problem I have with 5th edition is you can't kill anyone.
It's very hard,
It's so hard to die.
Yeah.
It's so hard to die. Yeah. I was talking, actually, I watched that video, Quest of Beast, but it was you, Seth, and Mike Mills, wasn't it, doing the D&D. And I play regularly with Seth. I run Delta Green with Seth.
Oh, Oh, yeah.
And I said to him, if I'd have been invited on that, I would have absolutely creamed the Lawyers, because I played so much AD&D back in the day. Because my YouTube channel is mostly about horror gaming, like Delta Green, Call of Cthulhu.
Yes.
And we do a bit of Warhammer, because that's a kind of Venn diagram of fantasy and horror.
Yeah.
I said, but I played AD&D more than anything.
Oh, so you know it all, yeah.
All of it, yeah, I know all the different worlds. But the innovation, you were saying, what was a really good innovation for it was, I thought the cosmology was really good in 4th edition.
Oh my goodness. I should revisit it, because I don't recall a ton about the cosmology, but if you're saying it's good, I want to go revisit that.
It really was, because it was about about how Tharizdun fell through the planes and the abyss.
Oh.
And was at the bottom, and there was the shard of evil or something like that cut its way through the planes, and that's what formed the abyss.
Well, that's really cool.
And Eberron got it right as well, because Eberron was a setting designed for that purpose. And they got things like where like aberrations came from. They weren't just part of the world; they were pulled from the far realms, whatever they wanted to call, where the outer gods came from. It was kind of, they were pulled in from different places, and that explained the reason for the world being the way it was.
Oh, that is true. And this 4th edition was sort of their opportunity to unite all of the settings that they hadn't tried to before. Mm-hmm. So that is interesting, because I feel like Eberron can then be baked into the world lore, like you said, and all that. That's actually a cool thing for 4th edition. I appreciate that they could do that. Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm glad for 5.5 edition, Greyhawk's now the setting. That gives my cold dead heart a lovely warm feeling, even if it's temporary.
Does. When was the last time? I think it was 3rd edition. The last time it was the main setting, which I'm grateful for, because I played a ton of 3rd edition, and like. Did you all play a lot? Did you play 3rd edition?
I didn't play it much. I left gaming for a bit. But I played more Pathfinder, I think. And then the first new edition I played after AD&D properly was 4th edition.
Right. Okay. Wow. Big jump. Did you play 3rd at all?
We played. There was a campaign that was set in the Dragon magazine, I think, which later became a separate thing, like a city of something. I can't quite remember the name now.
Oh no, it was this the one with Cauldron.
Yeah, that's it. Cauldron. Yeah,
Shackle City.
Shackle City. So I think that was serialized in Dragon, I think, and then it became a standalone module at some point. But we played that from, I think, the Dragon magazine entries that. So we played that one. That's my main memory. But I think I am terrible for getting things mixed up. So when we were playing two different campaigns of 4th Ed, I had them. They were like this in my head. So
I can barely keep one straight.
Yeah, I could remember what character I had, but then certain scenes I'd go, oh yeah, that's when
that's the other character.
Did that, and they'd go, no, that's not. That's the other one.
Different campaign.
Yeah, so my story is different.
But you had some engagement with 3rd edition, because it was really interesting that they made Greyhawk the primary setting. And I remember there was a spread in the player's handbook that had all of the gods and their symbols rendered in like this kind of cool old but full color style. Yeah,
I remember the symbol of Pelor with the sun and all that. And
and they were so cool. And I to this day, the way that I want deities to be presented is tied to the nostalgia of that particular spread in 3rd edition. It's so powerful to me. Like even the symbol for my company, the Arcane Library, there's the logo is like a circular, like Celtic dot with an upward looking eye in the center. And that is a very vague tribute to Bakab, however you want to say it. The god of magic from Greyhawk. Yeah. Okay, good. I do too. I never quite knew it's like the age old, how do you pronounce the Boulette monster or Boulet or whatever.
Boulet, isn't it? Boulet.
I think it's supposed to be Boulet.
How would you pronounce Boulet if you're French though?
Right. What would they say? I don't. They'd be like, you're all saying it wrong. Yeah. So 3rd edition, but I miss Dragon and Dungeon magazine and those cool campaign paths so much. Those were neat.
Yeah, they were good, weren't they? And there was a lot of them as well.
Oh yeah.
As I remember. Okay, right. Should we move on to the questions from the interwebs?
Well, let's do it. Yeah.
Right. So, first question. What we're going to do? Me and Lee are going to go turn to piece.
Yeah. Okay.
And we'll get into them as we go through them. Okay. So, the first question is someone called Meth1. What's her favourite gaming memory, and how has that influenced her own projects?
Oh, what a difficult question. It's I don't know if I could say I have one singular favorite gaming memory. It might be more of an era that I remember fondly for a lot of different things. But I mean, I really loved my middle school and early high school gaming experience of going to the game store on the weekends. It was the thing I looked forward to the most every week. I like lived for Saturday when I would get to go to the game store. And I'd walk in and all my friends would be there and our Dungeon Master James would be upstairs setting up and we would just go explore the dungeons and tunnels underneath the city state of the Invincible Overlord the whole afternoon and get pizza and just, you know, it was kind of my first taste of like independence and freedom away from like my parents as a kid and getting to go do what I wanted to do. And so the memories from that time, you know, I wonder if all of us have nostalgia for our childhood gaming. Yeah. And I think we're always chasing it to a certain extent and trying to recreate it. And it is most certainly true that Shadowdark's rules are trying to recreate the gaming type experiences I had during that era. Yeah.
So not within the 4 NEs. That wasn't a good. I'll email them now to see if you can take them off.
Just they'll make them send them. I have to send them back. You know.
Yeah. No. I'll be sending this recording to them. Yeah, I see what you mean though, because my first game and memory was we played RuneQuest. That was my first ever game, and I mean, I never played D&D until AD&D. Never played it. We never touched it. We would love RuneQuest so much that we played that. And it is right, you're forever just chasing that kind of that. It's like someone once said, the music you get into when you're 13 or 14, you will always love.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think gaming's similar. Them games that you got into back in that day, you're always going to chase that feeling you had when you played them with your friends before anything got complicated.
Yeah, it's true. And here's a philosophical question that is sometimes like difficult to answer, but I'm so curious. Do you guys ever have moments that feel again like you were a kid gaming? Because I feel like we chase them, but they're fleeting. And I'm always hoping when I sit down to play that it's going to feel like that again. But do you guys find that happens often for you, or is it sort of like an unattainable nostalgia?
It happens occasionally for me. I've got to be, not all the time.
Yeah.
But occasionally.
Yeah. I would say, for me, I think when you create a new character for a new system, the first few sessions, it's, you know, you get into grips with the rules, you know, and you might come across monsters that are not in 5th edition or the standard stuff that you play. For me, that brings it back a little bit because there's like a bit of wonder a little bit there and mystery, I suppose. But after a little while, it's just like maximize your character, like you.
Yeah,
listen
optimization to Mark, forums.
Listen to Mark telling you the best way to do it and stuff like that.
I know. It's like it's the proverbial chasing the dragon thing where you had such a fantastic early experience with something that now you're constantly looking for it again. And I think, you know, it's as adults, we have so many responsibilities and worries and cares that we didn't have, like you said, Bud. So it's like we were carefree back then. But, you know, I'm happy to say I think occasionally I still get there with games where you have this very magical session and you're like, that's why I do this. You know, it's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that does happen, yeah. Okay, so next question, Lee.
Okay, so this is from Significant Motor 82. Does she suffer from creator's block, and how does she deal with it?
Oh, yes, I absolutely do. I do. And, you know, I think that I'm so inspired by the creators who say that they can just sit down and create every day, like the Stephen Kings who just sit down and type out their 2,000 words a day, because I'm not so much like that. I think that if you're a professional creative, you do have to force yourself to the desk here and there. And, you know, you're not just gonna be driven by blind inspiration and passion every time you sit down. You do have to sit down and try. But I also don't think that you can force good things. That I think the best work that comes out of you is something that you've let stew for a while. And right, you have to let your subconscious mind process connections, because ultimately creativity is about drawing connections between unrelated things. And so you have to boil things, or at least I do, for a little while. And I find that if I'm creatively stuck or I'm just nothing good feels like it's coming out, It means that I need to return back to some source material that inspires me and seek out, new cool short stories to read, like new sword and sorcery stories, watch a few movies, try to dig into some new comics or even media that's in an unrelated space to sci-fi fantasy. Like I just started reading a few like Japanese comics, like mangas that are kind of fun and easy to read, and surprisingly they're very inspiring in ways that you haven't, that I hadn't tapped before. And I was like, oh, I'm getting a lot of cool ideas for D&D stuff from reading this modern manga about ghosts and aliens, and so I think that you have to refill your creative well occasionally, and then try your hardest to get something out. And if you're not doing well at that, then you need to shift your energy towards finding more source material to mine.
I mean, and also sometimes as a writer, you can't see the wood for the trees, can you? You can't see the obvious solution because you're so close to what you're looking at.
Yes.
And then sometimes you need to step away and for someone else to go, do you know what? There's this really obvious thing here you could do.
Yes.
And then you feel a bit stupid sometimes, like, why did I think of that? But it's just the way the human brain works, isn't it?
You need a friend who's willing to tell you that what you're writing sucks, which is hard to find. So you need to find those friends and cling to them,
I have no problem finding those kind of people. Okay. All right. So let's read to the next question. Now, this is a hell of a name, this. TCW 914.
Wow.
How did you come up with the moniker Shadowdark? Did the game come before the name or the name come before the game?
Oh, good question. The game definitely came before the name. So the name was later, and it's funny because Shadowdark is kind of a divisive name. Some people are like, that sounds really dumb. And I'm like, okay, I get it, but I think it's fun. But
while you're sleeping on your bed of money. Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah, like, oh, okay, No, I get it. Some people think that combining two similar names into a longer name is silly. So totally understandable. But it's actually very hard to find a name for a game that you like that's not already taken. So
that's true, yeah.
Yeah. In the working title for Shadowdark was Wizards and Thieves. I don't know why, because those were the two classes that I first developed for the game. And being called a thief is sort of a step away from the term rogue that kind of became more common in the later editions. So it was kind of a little wink to the fact that I was using wizard, the modern magic user, and then thief, the old rogue, and combining them. So the working title of the game for like 3 years was Wizards and Thieves.
Wasn't there a Forgotten Realms book in the late days of AD&D called Wizards and Thieves of the Realms?
I'm sure there was. I'm sure there's everything is taken. And
exactly. Shadowdark.
It wasn't. And I kind of like how the two words sound together and that they convey the primary feature of the game, which is the dangerousness of darkness. And so it ended up working out. But I had a list of like 80 names that I went through and was saying out loud and like, oh, that doesn't sound right. And like, oh, that's already taken. And yeah, so very challenging. But the Shadowdark itself became a concept in the game anyway, like the living darkness of the world, like the dangerous spaces that you go to, the mythic underworld became sort of its own entity. And so when I settled on the name Shadowdark, that immediately worked itself into the concept of the game and became like a very important part of it. Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Let's move to the next question then. This is a hell of a name.
Okay. So this one is from Crab Bucket. Yep. Any features or mechanics that you really liked but ultimately decided to cut?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm happy to say that for the most part, the things I really liked did make it into the game. So I'm trying to think of an example, but I almost initially included rules for like mounts and boats in the early draft of Shadowdark, which I actually ended up cutting because I felt like they were too squirrely, like they were just too fussy. And I ended up reworking them a lot and printing them later on in expansions that I released. So I liked the idea of them, but I just I didn't think they fit with the way that the game played. And I didn't think they were needed in the core rules, actually. So, yeah. But otherwise, not really.
I mean, it makes sense if you've got a game about being in the darkness and delving dungeons and all that. You're not really going to ride a horse.
Yeah, and it kind of introduced the idea of like, I mean, ultimately, Shadowdark's ethos is just trying to be simple. And I was like, horses basically just make you move faster. That's what they do. So I don't know if I need to make a whole. Yeah, like I didn't feel the need to make a whole robust rule system around mounts. I ultimately made a slightly more robust one than that. But I was like, if you're just riding a horse, just move faster.
I'm thinking more like war horses, though. Is probably that's where it gets a bit more fiddly, doesn't it?
Right, and it's can they wear armor? Do they spook in combat? Like I have created rules that reflect those things now. But as far as like simple riding a horse through the realms to move faster, I was like, I don't think I need to tell people they need rules for that. You just go faster. So
yeah, I would agree with that. Although to be fair, we could have done with the rules for boats because we started our scenario on a boat, didn't we?
Oh yeah, that's a thing.
Eventually, yes, you did get onto a boat. So.
Boats are a more useful, nuanced rule set. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I have used some rules for boats. I can't quite remember where I got them from though.
Yeah.
It's off the internet.
It could be one.
The internet.
Okay, next question then from Ellery B. Ask her about the Mega Dungeon project idea. A year or so ago, she said she had a great idea for a different way to make and run a Mega Dungeon. I'm waiting for her to take my money.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. The fact that someone remembers that is, I really appreciate it. And I do want to write a Mega Dungeon. And I had some ideas and still about how to present the dungeon as a sort of, I guess, like a combined map and key that makes it a lot easier to navigate. I mean, the traditional way to present a dungeon is to show a map and to put numbers on it and then to have keyed rooms attached to those numbers. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, if we were making something that was like a table-sized map, like, would there be a way for me to somehow key it so that the GM could just run it straight off of the map and maybe keep that information hidden from the players in some way? I don't know. I'm still working on it. I'm still working on I just think that the idea of a larger sized map with a key on it is in some ways easier for the game master than a book that you have to flip through. So some of my ideas pertain to that, but it's like how big can you go before it becomes unwieldy for the game master to use? So there's all kinds of crazy ideas I have like that, but I tinker with weird stuff every day,
See, the problem I always have with big maps is that undoubtedly people will go somewhere where they can see parts of the map that they've not been to.
Right.
And then it becoms a covering up exercise for the GM.
Oh, so true. That's a thing. Mm-hmm. Especially in a Mega Dungeon.
I ran Undermountain, sorry, many years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a pain in the backside because they would follow, say, a route and then there was all rooms that inflamed. And I was like, no, you haven't seen that, and it just kind of drives home the fact that smaller maps, I think, work better than big ones. Yes. Maybe if you can piece them together, that's a different thing.
That's what I was thinking too. What if they're modular? What if, there's got to be some way that you don't show the whole map from the start to the players. Otherwise, it's just crazy. I mean, I do that at convention games just because for simplicity's sake, I'll have a huge map printed on. I like printing giant maps on cloth and then just bringing the cloth and just rolling a 6-foot cloth out on the table with a huge map on it. But that's different because it's for convention play. It's like a one-off setting.
Yeah.
And, so it's I'm always poking I'm always fiddling with some crazy attempt at changing the way things work. It's so fun. Right before I came on this call with you all, I have a notebook next to me where I'm writing notes about how to create a farm simulation mini game for Shadowdark. It's
because that's
will
what people
that ever
want.
Go anywhere? They want a farm sim. Yeah. And I'm like, this will probably never go anywhere, but I'll waste a day or two just tinkering around with it for the intellectual exercise. And sometimes it results in fun things. So I don't know.
See, another thing people don't consider when they do Mega Dungeons is they seem to have them as large flat planes. But
right.
If you invert it so it's smaller levels placed on top of each other, you can do the same thing for the most part and have the stairs down, showing the different levels. A good example of that is the Abomination Vaults for Pathfinder. smaller levels, but
I don't know
stacked on top
those.
of each other. So then the map's not so much of an issue.
Yes, that seems like a great way.
Yeah.
And then, verticality is not very well explored, or I think it's so much harder, or it seems harder to interlink vertical levels, but maybe it isn't. I feel like that's the best dungeons have a huge amount of interlinking between levels. And so it's worth pursuing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you think about it as well, is that a doorway from one room to another room is fairly mundane, but
Right.
a staircase that leads down into the next lower level, for some reason, that seems to be more, I don't know, worrying, scary, spooky.
I'd agree with that.
I don't know.
It feels like a weightier decision to take that staircase, even though it might just be the same concept as you're stepping into a new room of the dungeon. Yeah.
Because it's the kind of delving deeper, isn't it? It's the kind of the idea that things are going to get worse the further down you go. Whereas on a flat map, I don't think you get that as much.
Yeah, there's the subtle context of like, oh, you're supposed to be here because it's on the same level. This was designed to be, made for you to explore in this way. There's weird contextual clues to the players that make them feel more at ease. So I think Lee's idea of like there is a very ominous thing about a staircase, even though in reality it might not be any more dangerous than the next room over. So yeah.
And and there's also a trapdoor. A trapdoor would
keeping something down. Yeah.
A trapdoor that's locked on the outside.
Ooh, what's it hiding?
Yeah.
What's it trying to keep down in that area?
A trapdoor that's locked from the inside. That's even worse.
Ooh, scary. Oh yeah, a lock on a trapdoor is.
Imagine if you moved to a new house and you found a door that was locked on the inside that had been bricked up. No windows, but it was locked from the inside. I would move house there and then.
Yeah, that's so funny. I was just reading a comic that has that concept in it, and it was so unexpectedly spooky. They're in a house that they found. They discovered that there's a portion of the house that they could see from the outside, and they were like, "Wait, but we can't seem to access this part of the house from the inside. We've just noticed that there's this like room type area here." And it turned out it was really something real bad. Something real bad.
Nothing good ever comes from these things.
Never.
Yeah.
Okay. Lee, your question?
Okay, this is from Muzzy Nat. Can you tease one thing from the upcoming Kickstarter, which you may have already done, but
throw them some joy for the Kickstarter.
Yeah. Something, I haven't talked a lot about this actually. Like we're doing a lot of game aids along with that people have been asking for forever. So like spell cards for all the third-party classes and first-party classes. We're going to be doing spell cards. We're doing a new Game Master screen because people want a variation on the one that we have. We're intending to do like tearaway character sheets and just stuff that people have been wanting for so long that I'm like, I'll make it eventually. We're incorporating those into this Kickstarter because it's just a convenient time to do it. So I'm excited I think spell cards in particular are pretty useful to spellcasters. So that one's going to be fun because we'll have it for every spellcasting class I've released so far, including the like non-core ones. So that's a thing. I hope people like those.
Yeah, I made my own.
Yeah, we've got our own that Lee made for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see because they're handy, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, they're really nice as well, actually. Okay, so the next question. This is from Spiritual Reading 45. Managing torches. Some details on this would be awesome.
Oh, sure. Well,
that's the question.
Yeah, I'm like, well,
is that a statement or a question?
I don't know.
What I mean. I could think of the thing I get asked most often, which is what happens when you light two torches. Because you're using a timer.
We've had that argument. We've had that argument many times over the last year.
So many times.
Bud says that, but in my game, I allow them to do multiple torches, and I keep a track of each torch, so they don't lose anything. The core rule is the next one that gets lit resets the timer, and the previous, or they'll go off the old timer, don't they? So. If you've got 10 minutes left on a torch and you'd light another torch, the new torch lasts for 10 minutes.
He makes out he's dead fair, but he's really mean.
They don't,
so mean.
They've also got a concept that there's this organisation called Big Torch that is trying to monopolise the whole Game World torch sales.
Yeah, every week we talk about Big Torch. That's what I said that last week, didn't I? Planned obsolescence and torches.
Yep.
There is. It's baked in. I was laughing so hard because my wife the other day, she doesn't really game very much, but she has tapped into gaming culture enough to be able to troll me all the time by saying things where I'm like, where did you even hear that? And she just looks at me with no context the other day and goes, so if you light something on fire with a torch, does the fire last an hour too? And I was like, shots fired. Oh my God, what? How would I even rule that? I'm not sure. It was so funny. But yeah, it's ultimately in playtesting, the craziness of having like 5 torches lit with 5 different timers would come up often enough that I was like, you know what? I'm gonna have the standard rule be everything goes on the same timer. However, I do play sometimes where we have multiple separate torch timers going, as long as the players are willing to manage their own torch timer, because I just don't want to be managing like 6 different timers for them. So, so that's, I think people are like, oh no, it's blasphemy to have separate torch timers. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's just, as long as you can manage that and it's not cumbersome, that's fine. So, that's a piece of nuance that I think is good for people to know.
Yeah. I'd never let my players manage their own torches because they mysteriously last a lot longer than they're supposed to. Yeah,
that's slanderous.
Just by accident, no intent. Just accidentally.
You have an app that does it.
Yeah. I found that. I know Todd Putnam made a very good app.
Yes, he did.
Actually runs on a web, but it doesn't do multiple torches. So I used it for a little while, but then I found another one on itch.io. Which allows you to run multiple torches, and it runs on Android, so you can use it on your phone. Unfortunately, it only works on 32-bit systems, which I found out recently. So if you've got a more modern phone, it won't run. So I have an old phone, which I complain. Bud hates this as well. Every time I start it up, I complain that my phone is trying to update itself because it knows it's out of date. But I am not allowing it to update.
Do you know what?
You're like,
his reaction is, this bloody phone trying to update. I don't want to update. I've told it. At every session this happens.
It nags. It really nags. Even during the middle of the game, it'll come up saying, "Are you sure you want to upload the next version of Android?" No.
It's so aggressive.
So it is very painful. Yes. It is. It won't go away.
It's like a persistent child. It's like,
yeah.
Yes.
Can we update now?
Yeah, it is, and it winds me up.
You won't take no for an answer.
I'm waiting for the developer to do a 64-bit version, and then it'll be happy days. It'd be good.
I know. Maybe this is I should see if we can get one developed, maybe as a stretch goal or something for the Kickstarter, where we need some truly widespread torch management options. Yeah.
So, question, kind of adjacent to this is, did Arcane Library create the VTT versions of Shadowdark?
Oh, there are some. There's some VT. There's like a Fantasy Grounds version that was made by. They're all made by third-party developers who sought permission, and then we worked out a way to do it. And I didn't personally make any of those implementations, but the Fantasy Grounds team is very active in my Discord server, and they're always communicating with what people want. Or, am I getting it mixed up? Both of the major VTTs that aren't Roll20 start with an F, and so I always get them mixed up.
Foundry, yeah.
Foundry. It's Foundry who are the active folks in my server, and they have a whole channel where they're always working together on things, and so they're very involved, and they keep me informed about what they want to do and make sure it's okay, you know.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, it wouldn't be difficult, I would imagine, to put in separate timers. It's built into Foundry. Yeah. That the DM could then just click an option.
I think it has that.
I'm pretty sure it has.
Yeah.
It did download it.
May already have that. Yeah.
My son plays using Foundry, and from what I've heard, it can do all sorts.
Oh, it's great.
We've not used it.
If you can be bothered.
Really much, but...
Yeah, I've heard once you get through the setup, it's quite good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm running God's Teeth on Alternate Friday, the Delta Green name that won the Ennie last year.
Yeah, cool.
And I accidentally showed them, because I'm crap with this kind of thing, I accidentally showed them all the handouts.
No! Oh no!
And they were like, who are all these people? I was like, no, don't, I'm just going to turn it off. But, it's one of them, if you can crack Foundry, it's fantastic. And plus with Foundry as well, you can pay a one-off price and have it for good with all the updates.
Yeah. Right. Which is so appreciated. That's really, I'm so grateful to companies that do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like an old school way of doing software, isn't it?
Yeah. You bought it once.
It's very much, it's a very much modern thing to have subscriptions now, isn't it?
Yeah.
But in the old days, buy it once.
That's
there
it.
You go.
Yeah. Until the planned obsolescence makes your device not work, and then you have to buy it again.
Yeah, that is true.
That is true. Okay,
Big torch.
Big torch, big software.
Yeah, big software. Next question. Oranus of Kern. What was it about 5th edition that made you decide to essentially gut it, slim it down, and release Shadowdark?
Oh, well, I still to this day love 5th edition and what it did for the game. And if I were going to play D&D trademark, it would probably be one of the contenders for the system I'd run. But I felt that since 4th edition in particular, probably since 3rd edition, really, the game's rules have pushed the exploration pillar of gameplay into the background where it used to be in the foreground. And I kind of wanted to return to the more self-driven, open-ended style of gameplay. Not that you can't have that in 5th edition. You absolutely can, but the rules are very focused on other aspects of gameplay. And so it was getting to the point where I was trying to design adventures of the type that I write for Shadowdark, and it just wasn't working with the way 5th edition runs. Darkness had become obsolete. Tracking gold and resources is practically hand waved and or very difficult given the encumbrance system. And I thought those were all so crucial to the old school style of play I was trying to emulate that I just couldn't make it happen with 5th edition. I did try to hack 5th edition initially, and I was like, this isn't going to work long term. It's the hack is as long as the game at this point. So that's really another that was one of the main drivers for me beginning work on Shadowdark.
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting approach because as we said, the idea of Shadowdark is, it seems to me, I mean, I've got more thoughts on this I'll discuss at the end, but it's in some ways it makes life difficult for the players, and it's about trying to drive them to overcome adversity in interesting ways. Yeah. Fifth edition has a massive safety net at all times.
Right.
It's so difficult to die.
It is. Even at first level, it's very hard. And I think the mentality is they want your character to feel cool and capable at first level. And Shadowdark is like, no, you suck at first level. You're going to die. Like
the way it should be.
Earn your yes. So it's a very big mentality shift between the two. And I prefer the sense of danger that you get as a first level character rather than the security of being so cool already.
Yeah, I would buy into that. Yeah. A bit of geek cred here, right? You can win a geek cred point here. Who is Oranus of Kern?
Ooh, I don't know. Who is it? Right,
Dark Sun.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, the Dragon Kings. Yeah. There was a Dragon King called Oranus who had a city called Kern. He was the slayer of lizard men. Because in Dark Sun they were all slain races. Oranus turned his back on being a Dragon King and became an Evangian. He was the only Dragon King who became an Evangian. So I think mark that down as a geek cred point for Bud. Yeah.
Intense point right there. That counts as 2.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take it. The next question is from one called Steelhard.
Okay.
I read on Dave Thornmore's blog that you played regularly with James Mishler, one of Gary Gygax's regular players. Not only how was that, but what did you learn, positive and negative?
Ooh, I think it was some of the best and most fun gaming I've ever had in my life because James is a superb game designer and dungeon master. To this day, I play in games with him, actually. And
really?
We'll either play online or we'll play it, like Gary Con. And I'm so fortunate that he's still in my life, and he had a weighty task, which was to teach a bunch of middle schoolers who didn't know how to play D&D the style that would become their touchstone in their lives, because I think when you start playing, it's really easy to latch on to that style of gameplay and to have it sort of define how you perceive the game for the rest of your life. And I think he really put in the effort to run exciting, fun games that were very, old school in their approach. And it did leave an imprint on me. It left a huge imprint on me. And I'm so grateful that he cared enough about teaching the next generation the kind of gaming that he treasured. And I think he felt it as a responsibility in a way to sort of to impart that to us, because someday we would do it for the next gen of gamers too, and keep it alive. Yeah.
I think you could have a geek cred point for that one, I think.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to play catch up.
Have you ran for him at all?
I have. He has, and he was an early Shadowdark player, and I remember this meant so much to me. He was like, he did the whole the student has become the master, and I was like, don't say that. That's not true. That's not true. But he was very proud of me, and I that means more to me than I can say. So yeah,
I can well imagine. Yeah. Did you ever meet Gary Gygax, by the way?
I did because of James. James pulled in a favor. He called a favor in and got Gary to spend some time hanging out with me and a couple of my friends on my birthday.
Wow.
As a birthday present, which happens to fall over Gen Con. So we were at Gen Con in Milwaukee when this happened. And James was like, Kelsey, there's someone who wants to meet you and wish you a happy birthday. And I was like, oh, really? Who is it? And so he takes us to this sort of out of the way there was like a little smoking patio connected to the con. And he was like, just go on out there and you'll see who it is. And we step out there and it's Gary Gygax with a couple of his friends. And they're out there like smoking and hanging out. And we spent a fair amount of time talking to them. And he was so fun to meet and so welcoming. And he was very, it's, like when you have, there's a cherished grandfather who doesn't treat you like a little kid. They kind of treat you like one of the adults, and like not in any kind of crazy way, but like he made us feel very much part of his crowd of geeks who were just like big D&D fans and didn't like talk down to us or anything or like treat us like children. And he was very encouraging, and he was like, you should become a dungeon master. And he was telling me, and he told me to, quote, slap my players around like redheaded dwarves. Like, noted. He's saying don't go easy on them, and he signed my DMs guy. He gave me some dice as a birthday present. It was so nice. And so we got to talk to him, and that made a big impression on me because we were so starstruck by him, and he was just so down to earth and encouraging. And I know there's some people who say that he like had some thoughts about women in gaming, but as a 13-year-old nerdy girl, I couldn't have felt more welcomed and encouraged by him. Yeah. So, take that for what it's worth. And I really appreciated that he was so cool.
Both Lee and I met him, didn't we?
Yeah.
You did tell me.
In 2000.
At the same time.
Yeah, at the same time. The year 2000, really? They held Gen Con in Manchester in England. So really? Me, Lee's wife Jen, who's one of our gaming gang, who's one of our players, and Mark, who we were talking about before, all drove out to Manchester, and we met you there, didn't we?
Yes.
And I brought in fact, I'll show you.
Ooh, it's an artifact. We're about to see an artifact.
I brought my... What the hell's that? Oh. I brought my Temple of Little Evil and my Queen of the Spiders, and he signed them for me. So you can see that, but
there
you go.
There it is. Look at that.
And
how cool! Well, what was it like?
But it was weird, wasn't it?
Well,
because he was just sitting there on his own.
Yeah, we walked past a booth, and Mark said, "Is that Gary Gygax over there?" And he was sitting on a desk, no one there at all, no one speaking to him.
He was like twiddling a pen in his fingers, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was just sitting there, so he was sort of like out of place almost. And we all sort of like did a surreptitious little look around and went, "Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, it is." So we all shuffled over and went, "Hello." And
Mark went, and "It's you." Didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
And Gary Gygax, Mr. Beat, went, "Yeah, it's me."
Yeah.
Yes, he knew what to say. Oh, how fun.
We were all starstruck, though. We were all starstruck.
right.
We all got photographs with him.
Yeah, I've got my photograph somewhere.
My photograph will bound to be, because it was a real photograph before digital photographs, really, I think.
Ooh.
It's printed out in a box on top of a wardrobe somewhere in the house. I'd have to go and find it. I know I haven't lost it. I just can't get it right now.
That's fair. That's the classic treasure style way of. I've got a few boxes like that too, so it's fun.
Yeah. We also saw.
Yeah. Oh, who did you see? Who else?
We also saw Larry Elmore.
Oh yeah,
he was there at that Gen Con. We got some stuff signed by him, and Bob Salvatore was doing a meet and greet in one of the lecture theatres there, and he was actually sitting in the audience. But no one really spotted him. So when the time came for his lecture to start, he wasn't on the stage, and then all of a sudden he just starts talking, and everyone's like turns around, and he's in the middle of the audience, and I think he stayed there the whole time.
Wow!
And one memorable thing from that is that one of our friends called Michael, there you go, had a Star Wars character called Drizzler Durden, who used 2 lightsabers, a bit similar to a Drow Ranger that we might know. And we told him that. And he laughed.
It's so familiar.
Yeah.
I love that was it's I've talked to Luke, because I know Luke, his son, is like very trying to set up some gaming convention stuff in England too, and he I remember him saying like it's a very like kind of wide open place where it doesn't feel as crowded as other places. He's like, you can at cons just walk up to somebody who you're excited to meet, and they're actually available to meet you. And
yeah, very much so.
I remember him saying it was sort of the vibe there still felt very sort of. Well, I can't remember how he put it, but he was just excited that he's like, yeah, everything feels very accessible over there. Like if you're going to a con, you can actually meet people that you're excited to meet, and it's not like some massive thing. And so I wonder if that was Gary's experience too. Like you can actually meet people here, and it's not crowded to the gills quite yet.
Do you think you'd ever come to the expo?
Yeah. It's got huge attendance. I would love to go to it. People say that the vibe feels more relaxed, and I really like that notion. And I would love to find a reason to come out for that one. I'm still struggling to hit all the major stateside ones, so I think as soon as I can get my con appearances sort of organized better, I would love to come out to the UK for one. It would be so cool.
It's at a nice time of the year as well. It's kind of early June, so it's nice and sunny weather, and sometimes it's sweltering. But I mean, Gen Con's like having a convention in the desert, isn't it? It's so hot, and I'm not used to that heat.
The hottest. Yeah.
It's so hot.
It's the high summer. Yeah.
Yeah, you step outside. I've always said it when these have asked like what's it like, and I say, the way when you're abroad and you step outside and the aircon's suddenly not there, and then the heat hits you. It's like when you open an oven. I said, like, that's what it's like in Indianapolis. It's so hot, and we're just not used to it here. Really? We don't get weather like that. Okay, so do you want to ask the next question there? Right?
Yep. Next question from Offert. How did the spellcasting rules, i.e., lose the spell on a failed check, come to be? Have you tried other approaches there?
It came from, well, I was definitely a fan of the Dungeon Crawl Classics spellcasting system, which is in a lot of ways similar. It's Dungeon Crawl Classics. Each spell is a very involved thing. Like you have to reference a table each time you cast it, but I believe it's also you lose it on failure with casting or something similar to that. And I really liked the idea of roll to cast and then getting to do away with the spell slot system, Vancian style magic, that I personally find very cumbersome and have never totally loved. I just think that spell casting being more unpredictable is more interesting and fun because, if you have guaranteed 3 castings of Fireball today, there's a little bit less excitement. I guess you're not always sure it's going to be maximally effective because you could make it, the monsters can make a save against it. But I just like the idea that spellcasting is more dangerous. It turns magic from being like a commodity into something that you can't really commoditize because it's too risky to do so. Like if I'm not going to cast, a spell to heat the water in my house each day to make myself tea because there's a chance I could literally blow myself up. So it turns magic from becoming a sort of science into being something completely beyond true mastery. And I like how dangerous that makes the world feel. So it had to be roll to cast for me in order to achieve that. So yeah.
It makes it unpredictable. And I think a bit of unpredictability. I mean, it's a game where we roll dice, isn't it? So you want to roll dice.
Yeah.
That's the half the fun. And I think it's the unpredictability about magic like that way, because I like the DCC way of doing it as well. I've not played a lot of it, but when I've played it, it's immense fun.
It's so fun,
and the fact that you can burn stats, spell burn to parry spells and make
them go nuclear.
Really powerful, yeah. I like stuff like that.
It's a great game, DCC.
It's so well supported, and the community's so good.
Yeah.
Like I mean, the Gen Con last year, which I was at. I played DCC. We did an X-Scroll Classics tournament, which is like, it's meant to be like a mix with WWF wrestling, but you're going through a dungeon, you got to put like product placement in and stuff like that.
Yes, it's so funny.
And I've never seen a more welcoming gang of people than the DCC players. They don't care the colour of your skin, your sexuality, your gender. They don't care about any of that. Just get some dice out and play. And when everyone dies, they go over and ring the gong.
Yes.
And everyone said, chants blood, and then they go back to the game. And I died twice. so everyone stops and looks around as you hit the gong, and it rattles all the way through the arena. They're such a welcoming gang, the DCC gang, and I wish all communities were more like that.
I know, and they have the best writing teams, and like they're truly about having fun with everything they put out. I mean, it's baked into the DNA of the game. When you read it, you're laughing and smiling because it's so fun to read, and so they've done such a marvelous job with it. And I aspire to be a company as cool as Goodman Games. They're like a leading light for how to be a fantastic games publisher. Yeah,
and they really support the community as well.
Yes, yeah, they do.
Which I really, I mean, when you compare like the DCC community to some of the OSR communities, I mean, it's chalk and cheese, isn't it? They're very, very different.
What a way to say it. Chalk
and
cheese.
Have you not heard that
before?
No,
that's
a very English saying that. It's like two things that are so completely different, chalk and cheese.
Oh, I'm going to say that now.
Okay, let's move to the next question. I think we're about halfway. Right, this is from Jade and Hinger. There seem to be many homebrew classes out there, which is great for Shadowdark and its players. What is your guidance for balance when it comes to class creation? Are there some general guidelines for how to not over or underpower classes?
Oh, yes, that's a fantastic question. And I think there's a two-part answer I would give. And the first one is that I did put some design guidance about the core pillars of Shadowdark into the main book in the Game Master section about the ways that you can break Shadowdark very badly. And it's only a few things. So I would really encourage anybody who wants to design a class for the game to try to take those pillars to heart. Something like, don't give your characters dark vision. Don't give them a way to permanently create light sources, and there's some insight into the underlying design of the game. Like the action economy in Shadowdark is very constrained. So think very carefully before you give characters multiple actions or attacks on their turn. Don't just make that so easy. So I would start there if someone wants to design a class for Shadowdark. And then the other thing I would do is to look at the 4 core classes in the core book, which is the 4 icons. You have the fighter, wizard, priest / cleric, and thief. And see that each of those classes is trying to be the best at one particular aspect of the game, and that whatever you create should try to line up with the power levels of those classes and not necessarily outshine them. Like game balance in Shadowdark isn't such a strict thing so much as like make sure that your class is the best at what its chosen focus is, and that it's not so good that someone would never play a different class, and if you run your design through those two questions, I mean, you're like 80% of the way there already. And then the rest of it is just fiddling with tiny nuances. So yeah, and just get familiar with the core ethos of the game, the design pillars that you want to respect, and then look at the 4 main classes that already exist and weigh your design against them and see, are you matching their power level and design focus? And that's where I would start.
Yeah, I mean, I think to kind of to kind of sum up what you're saying, what I'm gathering is it's better to underpower than overpower.
Yes, yeah, it is. You have to be, that's a great thing to note, because even for me, you have to exercise a lot of restraint. Like it's actually challenging, because you want to give, like, oh, it'd be better if this class had a D8 hit points instead of a D6, or, you know, it's hard to put restraint in, but the more difficult, you don't want to make it impossible for the player to pilot the character, but if you make it difficult, it spurs them into wanting to get stronger and more powerful. So you have to give them something to improve at. They can't be amazing from the start.
I think also players never complain when the DM will say, you know what, this is slightly underpowered, I'm going to improve it, but they will complain if you take things away from them.
Oh, yes, they will. They will. Yeah.
Yeah. I was actually on the live stream you did for the Ranger class from the Kickstarter. And that was very much, as you just said, you were sort of spitballing ideas and people were chipping in with comments. And occasionally somebody put a comment in and you'd stop and go, and in a polite way, you'd try and say, no, that's a little bit too, you had a very clear vision, I think, for what you wanted a Ranger to do. But a lot of people have got like AD&D versions or 5th edition versions or whatever. And they were trying to get like the all-rounder combat sort of machine that has animal companions, and that was not really where you wanted to go. And it was very interesting watching that whole live stream. It was really good.
Oh, thank you for being there for it. And it's like you said, you have to. It's very hard to say no to someone's idea that they're excited about, and so you have to be able to justify the game design reason, so it doesn't sound like a personal attack, you know. So like, no, that's a dumb idea. Yeah, so it's but if you have a vision for what you want to do, I think that helps you fall back on testing ideas against the vision. So yeah.
Okay, so next question then, Lee.
Okay, that is from Alex the Alex. Is she excited to play anything new at GaryCon?
Ooh, well, I am. I mean, I get to play in a weird variety of things. Cons are great for kind of going outside your normal swimming pool, so to speak, and I get to play a couple first edition D&D things, which, you know, strangely enough, I actually think, well, of all of the numbered editions, first edition is the one I've played the least. So I've actually played more basic or like 0th edition, like brown box, than I have first edition, strangely enough. So I really relish the opportunities to play first edition and see what rules the game master is using. Are they using weapon speed? You know, like, what are they using?
God.
I know. Like, do they have the audacity to try using weapon speed in this game? So I'm excited about that. I really do love fantasy focused RPGs. I love the D&D lineage, so I'm often playing stuff like that. And I'm trying to think what, if I have anything on the docket for the con that falls outside of that. Probably not. But if I had the chance to, and somebody was like, let's play something totally off the wall, I would be excited for the opportunity. You know, play a quick game of something really, really crazy, like Dogs in the Vineyard or something really obscure.
Is there anything you really want to play that you've not had the chance to play yet?
Oh yeah, there's a lot. Let me think of, well, I would love to play some of the Into the Odd lineage games, and I own the books, and I think Chris is such a cool, fun person. He's he's hilarious in person. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to hang out with him.
Oh yeah, I've played with Chris. I've played Mothership with Chris. He played an Android, and I was convinced he was an Android.
Oh,
he played it so deadpan.
I know I've made it into this joke where I announce his credentials every time he and I are like entering, because he's so humble that he practically scoots around in secret, and like people, I'm like, you know that this is the person who invented the Into the Odd lineage of games and everything that came after it, and So it's become a joke where I announce him every time we come in, and he gets all embarrassed. But he's so fun. It would be a dream to get to play in like an odd game, an Into the Odd style game that he ran, for instance. I would be so thrilled at that opportunity. I'll bug him about that.
I mean, he might really suck at running it. He just might be good at writing it.
Maybe. Let's see. Challenge.
I have a kind of love-hate with Chris. We kind of mercilessly make snide remarks at each other, but when we're face to face, it's only ever done in fun. I'd say I played with him at Vale of Grogmeet, the
I've heard of it.
Yeah, in Manchester. It's about 40-minute drive from where I live. Yeah. And I played with him, and I had a chat with him in the pub afterwards about how, because he was running a Kickstarter with no stretch goals. It was like literally a pre-order, and he's like, but the problem with stretch goals you've got to then create them. He says, whereas I have second edition written now, I can get it into production.
Yeah.
Kind of makes sense when you put it like that. But yeah, me and Chris kind of insult each other in a very English offhand way.
He's got this style of humor that I think it's the sort of dry. He says something really hilarious with a straight face, you know.
Yeah. He's very much like that.
Yeah.
Okay, next question then. This is from someone called Epic Lakai. I don't know what that is. She mentioned before that she views classes leaning into the core pillars of the game through the lens of combat, support, social, and environment. I'd like to hear more about that, as most games you just go with the 3-pillar system.
Oh, yeah, it is true. There's sort of, isn't it funny that the theory of the decade is sort of all agreed upon, you know, like these are the 3 pillars of the game. And I think that, you know, environment and exploration could probably be merged, or they're viewed as the same pillar, like environmental manipulation and exploration, you know, the exploration part of the game are sort of similar, but I think that they are different enough that I design character classes that lean into each of those 2 things. And I guess the perfect example of this would be the thief versus the wizard. I think that a wizard is a responsive class that tries to change the environment in response to a need. And I think that a thief is a proactive person in the environment whose job is to go out and move the party's ability to explore further along. So I kind of view them as slightly separate roles, and thus slightly separate sub-pillars of what people would ordinarily call exploration. And then social and combat, I think, are pretty clearly distinct from each other and generally agreed upon to be quite separate and having their own needs and subsystems. So, yeah.
But do you not think cleric could potentially be support and social?
Definitely. Yeah, I actually do think there are classes that have a primary purpose and then they lean into a secondary purpose. Like a wizard is another, a priest or a wizard both kind of lean into a new pillar. The wizard's probably being, honestly, combat, because once a wizard hits 5th level, they go from being the manipulator to the blaster, you know, they get fireball and lightning bolt. And so yes, there's definitely some classes that dip into other pillars. Cleric and priest is another for sure. They tend to have like higher social stats,
like charisma scores, and the wisdom to know when to use them. I think to kind of be clear, my understanding of it is you've got a class that dips into 2 of the pillars. The primary can't be as good as the one that focuses. For example, a wizard will always get 9th level spells traditionally in D&D before a sorcerer will. Yes. Because sorcerers are as much social because of their high charisma.
Yeah, that's true.
So they should never be on a par with a wizard, because then who would play a wizard? You'd just play a sorcerer.
Right. That's exactly it. You have to make sure that they are distinct and, you know, one's not just an inferior version of the other. You know, they have to have something. Yeah, and that's true with Shadowdark wizards. They have a faster spell progression than priests like clerics do, because clerics are dipping into combat earlier on and a bit more sturdily than wizards. So there has to be a balance. Yeah.
Not in our party. I'm like a glass cannon, aren't I?
Oh no. I know someone did it.
I think
yeah, like
Sorry, go
clerics
on.
have the highest potential for being. I think someone one time figured out the highest damage output possible is a 10th level priest with certain magic items under the effects of certain support spells. So priests are really good.
Oh, I remember the days of doing that in AD&D, trying to work out who could do the most damage. And I think it was a wizard with Meteor Swarm. With there was something you could do to a Meteor Swarm because potentially that could do 160 points of damage
Oh,
in a diamond shape. And there was something you could do to enhance the damage, but that's besides the point.
it's fun to think about. But
Yeah. You're gonna say, like,
Yeah, I was going to say that Bud's character in my game is a priest, and his character is only young, so like sort of 17, 18, I think. He's had a slight falling out with the church that he belongs to.
Yeah.
Over some pots and pans, believe it or not.
Rightly so.
Recently in the game, he found the party found one of the I think it's a supplement one, but it might be from the original book. I can't remember now, but it's a cube made by a famous goblin wizard that basically you use it and it improves one of your stats randomly to 18. And after a lot of deliberation, Bud's character was given the cube.
Yes.
And when he activated it, you rolled. Did you use a luck token to re-roll as
Probably.
well?
That's all I ever used them for.
Whichever way it went, he ended up with strength 18. So he went from being like a gangly youth who was like slightly peeved with his church to a muscle-bound, like primary combat person now, who occasionally heals.
Yeah,
I love
with
it.
a bad cough because he's got 19 hit points.
He's gone through quite a weird transformation, really. Bud's character has.
That's so fun. I love that happened. That's one of my favorite magic items. Anything by the Goblin Wizard Brack is like pretty crazy.
That's it.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah.